The assassination of John F. Kennedy, the eternal riddle shrouded in a mystery inside a paradox, all served on a platter of what the hell. So who really shot JFK? Was it a lone gunman? Or is there more to this story than meets the eye? As for me, I'm your sleuth for the evening, your guide through the labyrinth of half-truths and fabrications.
Never mind that. Don't smoke, kids. It's bad for you. Back to business. The answer to our big question could change not just how you see history, but tilt your entire damn worldview. If you think you know the real story behind JFK's assassination, brace yourself. We're about to confront that with evidence. All right, the stage is set, and you're probably sitting there scrolling through Twitter, trying to get a grip on what's going on with big geopolitical event X, which shall remain nameless today, and you're probably knee-deep in a swamp of misinformation. Believe it or not, how we perceive events like JFK's assassination can be a litmus test to our approach for life. Misunderstandings can have real consequences. In this video, we're going to arm you with a nuanced understanding of the JFK assassination using evidence and a healthy dash of skepticism as our guiding stars. We'll start by setting the historical stage, then we'll delve into the pitfalls of eyewitness accounts, expose the not-so-secret motives behind government narratives, and break down the real dynamics of conspiracies. We'll close by discussing how all of this actually matters to you living in this whirlwind of a modern world. So, grab a notepad and a cocktail. Heck, why not both? We're in for a wild but educational ride. Most people believe at least some aspect of the JFK assassination is not in the official narrative. JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald, the lone gunman, something might be missing. So let's set the stage. November 22nd, 1963, Dallas, Texas. JFK, the 35th president of the United States, is riding in a motorcade, waving at the crowd, living his best life. Re-election is primarily going through his mind until 3 shots ring out, and then what's going through his mind is a bullet turning it to jelly. And just like that, the world changed. The Warren Commission spent nearly a year investigating the hows and whys for the president having to have a dramatic shuffling around of his travel plans. Their conclusion was that a man named Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone and shot JFK. But in 1977, the House Select Committee on Assassinations comes along and says JFK was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy based on some acoustic analysis. So who do we believe? The government? The other government? Alex Jones? For decades, this event has been picked apart more than a carcass in a vulture convention. Questions about the magic bullet theory, the CIA's involvement, and even the mafia have turned this into America's favorite whodunit. The Warren Commission, a group that included everyone from senators to former CIA directors, said that Oswald acted alone. But critics argue that they were about as thorough as a teenager cleaning their room, stuffing everything under the bed, and calling it a day because there's an election coming up and people needed to see things that were in control. Were they careless, or were they merely covering up that they did it themselves? So I guess we should then look at the person they claim did the shooting, Lee Harvey Oswald, a U.S. Marine veteran turned alleged lone gunman. He's not exactly the perfect suspect. His motives weren't super clear, and thanks to Jack Ruby, a nightclub owner shooting him, he was far too dead to explain it himself. Convenient, isn't it? And let's not forget the infamous grassy knoll. Some critics of the magic bullet theory insist that a second shooter placed here was necessary in order to make the injuries and shots that happened. Even the House investigation using acoustic analysis suggested a second gunman might have been involved. So to sum up the official story, they claimed that Lee Harvey Oswald acted on his own and was able to assassinate the president. Why he did it is a bit of a tougher question, but it's somewhere between him having vague communist or maybe anti-American sympathies and probably being more than a little mentally unbalanced. Here's the thing though, most Americans don't buy that story. This is the part that makes confronting this very spicy. I feel like the conspiracy theories are the norm rather than the exception in this case, and studies bear that out. About 61% of Americans don't believe the official lone gunman story. And I'm that guy who usually gets called in to confront conspiracy theories. So what does Tristan believe? Well, We'll get to that, but first, I want to walk you through the process of how I came to my conclusion. But I'm impatient. I think Oswald or Bernie Sanders did it alone, and now I'm going to explain why I think so. Can you really trust what you remember? Or is it more like playing a game of telephone where the original message, your memory, gets distorted by the time it reaches the end? Our eyes and memories can deceive us. And when it comes to something as monumental as the JFK assassination, the stakes are pretty high. Eyewitness testimony has been a cornerstone of the criminal justice system for centuries. But let's be real. Recent research is making a pretty strong case that it's as reliable as a chocolate teapot. Psychological studies have shown that human memory is very hilariously even fallible, often influenced by stress, leading questions, and even the passage of time. Do you remember the Satanic Panic? Recovered memories ruin lives, all because our brains forget, distort, and then add our own memories all the time. Let's get nerdy for a second. One study found that stress can mess with our ability to remember to do stuff in the future. So if you forgot to feed your cat because you were stressed out about work, which I literally did yesterday, it's not you, it's your brain. And I can think of no more stressful situation than being in an active shooter situation. If you want evidence, just ask any American who goes to school. Or if you want a less dark answer, talk to anybody who's been married and try to get them to remember the details of the actual day of their wedding. You'll be surprised how little they actually can remember. It's why videographers, very important for weddings. Also, get this, every time you recall one of your memories, you actually change it. Your brain actually has like an edit button, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's what allows us to move on from traumatic events and adapt to new situation. So the next time someone says they remember it like it was yesterday, maybe don't bet the farm on what they're saying. Because neuroscience tells us memory is more like a sketch artist who's had a few too many. Sure, they'll get the basics, but the details might be a little wobbly. And maybe even more wobbly when you can use this to sell books, for example. Memory reconstruction, false memories, memory biases, they're the reason why your Uncle Bob thinks he saw Bigfoot, for example. Let's just try one quick little experiment-a-rooney. How many of you noticed that starting at the beginning of this section of video, I am no longer wearing my watch? In the case of the JFK assassination, eyewitness accounts varied widely. Some claimed to hear multiple shots from different directions, while others were certain they heard only 3 shots from a Texas school book depository. And let's not forget, these accounts get juicier the more books they can sell to the growing JFK conspiracy community over the decades. That's not even factoring that we're really bad at locating the sound of gunshots, and Dealey Plaza specifically is hard to locate sounds in. Honestly, if you're interested in all the fiddly bits, I'll recommend you watch this huge video on the subject by Lamino that goes into many aspects of the conspiracy that I just don't have it in me to do myself. And your first-person memories can change by simply hearing other people's testimonies in the media or by an Oliver Stone movie. It's like VD at a retirement home. It spreads everywhere, and no one wants to admit that they're the ones that's part of the problem. Given the inconsistencies and the high stress situation, it's clear that relying solely on eyewitness accounts can be problematic. Even the Warren Commission had to grapple with these inconsistencies, which contributed to public skepticism. And many of the conspiracy theories surrounding JFK's assassination are built on these shaky eyewitness accounts. If the foundation is as unstable as my financial future, should we trust the theories that we build upon it? Plus, many conspiracies around the JFK assassination are products of it happening during a time when there were many real conspiracies happening all around the world. So let's talk about context. Imagine living in a world where everyone is a potential spy. Your coworker, the mailman, the Noid. But imagine living through history where enemy spies were actually all over the place. Let's dive into the Cold War, a time when paranoia was pretty common and sometimes justified. From 1947 until the bitter last day on Boxing Day of 1991, the US and the Soviet Union were like 2 kids fighting over a ball, but instead of a toy, it was influence over the world as it broke away from European colonization. And if they actually fought each other, it would end the world in nuclear fire. This metaphor is not great. It was also, according to every country's PR anyway, an ideological showdown, capitalism versus communism. Because they couldn't directly duke it out lest they start the Fallout series, they relied a lot on espionage and spycraft, attempting to guess each other's move. Imagine a never-ending game of paper, rock, scissors, except everyone's trying to outwit each other with double, triple, or even quintuple guesses, all in vain ignorance of the fact that rock always wins, and you can't prove me wrong on that. In this pressure cooker of paranoia, conspiracy theories were the daily special. You know that feeling when you were a kid, sneaking around to catch your parents wrapping Christmas presents? Multiply that by 1,000,000, and you're still not even close to Cold War levels of suspicion and tension. When the president got a little taken off the top, some of the top suspects were the CIA and the KGB, the McCartney and Lennon of Cold War conspiracy theories. One popular narrative suggests the CIA sent JFK into early retirement because he was going soft on communism, which was fair. The CIA has done that to a lot of people at that time. On the flip side, another theory points the finger at the Soviet Union, claiming that they took out JFK to destabilize the US because, nothing screams destabilization like assassinating a world leader. And let's not forget, Lee Harvey Oswald had lived in the Soviet Union and had expressed sympathy for communist ideology. The Soviets never realized that America is pretty damn good at destabilizing itself with a distinctly unstable form of economy and a harsh racial caste system, so they just needed to wait a few more decades. And these theories weren't crazy. The Cold War didn't just make conspiracy theories possible, it made them plausible. Have you ever heard of Operation Northwoods? That was a real declassified conspiracy involving stage acts of terrorism to justify a war against Cuba. You heard that right. Real conspiracies do exist, but unlike grandmas posting about 5G chips in the vaccine, they come with evidence. And let's not forget, these real conspiracies have a habit of being kind of leaky. The more people involved in the conspiracy, the harder it is to keep it secret. There's a literal math equation for it. If you want an example, maybe just ask Richard Nixon. The Cold War was like a petri dish for conspiracy theories. It was a time when the US was overthrowing democratically elected governments just because they voted wrong. So when you hear someone say, the government would never do that, remind them that sometimes they absolutely would and did. The Cold War created a climate of fear and mistrust, making it fertile ground for conspiracy theories. It's crucial to understand this backdrop to fully grasp why so many alternative theories about JFK's assassination gained traction. But here's the million-dollar question. Could the government itself be stoking the fires of these conspiracies? And not because they're playing 40-dimensional chess with Elon Musk, but because they done fucked up and tried to cover their asses. Also like Elon Musk. Incompetence in my government? It's more likely than you think. Do you trust your government? It's a simple question, but the answer often reveals a lot about how we interpret events like the JFK assassination. I recently, like yesterday, got a flurry of conspiracy theorists in my TikTok mentions who claim that Matthew Perry Chandler died from the COVID vaccine. People are so distrusting of professional medicine and the government that they've turned to chugging horse dewormer and drinking bleach. This is all because of something called the credibility gap. It's this Grand Canyon size chasm between what the government says and what it actually does. This gap isn't a newfangled invention, it's as old as the hills and twice as dusty, especially in times of crisis, like when a certain country, let's not name names, bombed a hospital and blamed it on someone else. No one believed them. Why? Because they lied about this stuff before, more or less constantly. Now let's bring this back to JFK. His assassination would become something that people could latch onto when their faith in the government started to wane, which started happening in the 1960s. Maybe, for example, because in the years since Kennedy's death, the US got more and more involved in a war for unclear reasons, killing lots of young Americans for seemingly no purpose. The government's handling of the investigation was also less than stellar. The Warren Commission, our supposed saviors in this mess, concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, but this investigation needed to happen before the 1964 election, so it was quick and sloppy and full of jurisdictional issues and straight up blunders eroding people's trust. And let's be clear, governments lie a lot. My point isn't that the government is a beacon of truth and justice, far from it. My point is that you need to trust the government will do what it's going to do. It has its own motivation and goals, and then you just follow the evidence. Don't just swallow whatever narrative they or anyone else feeds you. So the obvious next question is, what's the media's role in all of this? Because I did most of a PhD in media and memory history, so the media were not innocent bystanders. They often amplify the credibility gap by either blindly parroting government lines or going to the other extreme, peddling conspiracy theories for clicks. It's like they're either the government's lapdog or they disbelieve anything the government says just because they're the ones that said it, with little room for nuanced, evidence-based reporting in there. This media circus doesn't help. It just muddies the water even more. If you want to know more, my last video was entirely about this subject. And let's not forget the rise of alternative media. In a world where anyone with a smartphone can be a journalist, like I can be a historian, the credibility gap widens even further. Now, don't get me wrong, alternative media can be a powerful tool for good, but it can also be a breeding ground for misinformation. Also, the credibility gap that the mainstream media experiences today is very well earned. Lies taken from the government and parroted by the media without investigation led to the Iraq War. Mistrust in major media companies is more than earned, but alternative media is a double-edged sword that can either cut through government BS or stab you in the back with wild, insane theories that have no basis in reality. Because anyone can post stuff on the internet, and also anyone can post stuff on the internet. So, in this credibility abyss, it's not just the government you have to watch out for. You've got to keep an eye on who's feeding you the news and question their motives too. Because in a world where the lines between fact and fiction are increasingly blurred, your best weapon is a critical mind. The credibility gap is like fertile soil for the wild, outlandish plants we call conspiracy theories. When people don't trust official accounts, they're more likely to believe the moon landing was faked or that lizard people are running the world. But remember, just because the government screws up doesn't mean there's a grand conspiracy at play. Blind trust in the government or full-blown conspiracy thinking are both dangerous. That's just a bad way to have a brain. So where does this leave us? In a world where the credibility gap is more like a credibility abyss, it's more important than ever to be critical, skeptical, and above all, evidence-based in our thinking. Because let's face it, the government isn't going to start being honest anytime soon. But that doesn't mean we should just stop seeking the truth. Now, I'm going to make my own case. Are you ready for the truth? At least as far as I can interpret it. But let's be real. The truth is often more complicated than a headline, a tweet, or a flashy TikTok video. Diving into the JFK assassination feels like jumping into the mainstream conspiracy deep end. It's not just a historical event, it's a symbol, a beacon for those who oppose the US government. But let's not get carried away and turn it into a bad heuristic emblem, shall we? So, what have we uncovered in our journey through the shadows of the JFK assassination? We've navigated the credibility chasm, wrestled the fallibility of eyewitness accounts, and danced through the Cold War's ominous overtones. So, how does one even approach something like this? Follow the evidence. It's not about choosing sides or picking a team. It's about following the breadcrumbs, wherever they may lead. And speaking of evidence, let's talk about the Zapruder film and ballistics. These aren't just historical footnotes, they're the building blocks of our understanding of what really happened on that fateful day in Dallas. The Zapruder film is a 26-second reel that casts a long shadow over the landscape of JFK assassination theories. Captured by Abraham Zapruder, this brief moment in time has become a monumental pillar of forensic evidence. It's more than a home movie. It's a historical document, a visual testimony that invites us to witness the harrowing moments of November 22nd, 1963 in Dealey Plaza. The film is a canvas on which the single bullet theory unfolds, a narrative suggesting that one bullet, one fateful trajectory, was responsible for the wounds suffered by both Kennedy and Texas Governor John Connally. If you look at it, you can see it. People have quipped about the direction of Kennedy's head how it moves after he's been shot, but that's been shown over and over again that that's just how heads react when shot from the exact angle Oswald shot him from. It's like a conservation of momentum thing with the skull absorbing the kinetic power of the bullet, or I don't know, something. Ask a scientist. On that note, let's get into ballistics, the science of projectiles. It propels us deeper into exploring this as a forensic investigation. It's not just about bullets and trajectories, but about understanding the physical testimony left in the wake of gunfire. Modern experts in ballistics, armed with 3D lasers and high-tech gadgets, reopen the investigation, allowing us to visit this single bullet theory with fresh eyes and a new perspective. Wound ballistics in the JFK assassination were not fully understood when it happened, and it continues to be misunderstood and often misrepresented today. Bullets do weird things when moving at super high speeds. The bullet fragments recovered from the JFK assassination have been analyzed using various methods, including emission spectrometry and instrumental neutron activation analysis. I don't know what those words mean, but it sounded fancy. These analyses have provided valuable information about the bullets used in the assassination, and overall, the evidence does support that Oswald could have totally made those shots from that angle. The magic bullet theory isn't that magic. The shots could have all come from one shooter, especially one with military training, and from the exact place that Oswald was. And even if there was a second shot, it's likely a Secret Service agent fired off the cuff. This is why the field of forensics is so key. Now we have scientific evidence to lay out what happened. We're no longer trying to interpret the validity of different people's takes, we're studying the data. Eyewitness testimony can lie. It can be wrong. It can stretch the truth to sell books. People regularly confess to crimes they never committed. Our brains are truly just meat with opinions. Another factor is that many conspiracy theories made hay from large parts of the Warren Commission being redacted, and still redacted today. The main reason I find this unconvincing as evidence of a conspiracy is that my Occam's razor believes that the report has two things they really wouldn't want public. One, a detailed investigation would have had to have done some work to find out whether Cuba or the USSR was behind the assassination. That means tapping intelligence assets in those countries. With the way that spy rings work, these countries could probably use information from unredacted versions of these documents to pin down current American intelligence assets in Cuba and Russia. Two, it's also a detailed guide for how one guy without that much work actually was able to circumvent all security and kill the literal president. These explanations make a little bit more sense to me anyway. Let's not forget the nature of conspiracy theories. They're elusive, slippery, and harder to keep under wraps than a cat in a bag. So all that being together, the ballistics and forensics really checking out the single shooter theory, and more logical explanations for why the Warren Commission's so redacted, and even furthermore, the fact that a conspiracy that needed to include enough people to not only kill the president, but also to cover up all of the investigations into the president's assassination. After 60 years, something would have come out. It's an inevitability. That's my take. Lee Harvey Oswald with the rifle in the book depository. So in a world where you can't trust anyone, where conspiracies are now more popular than ever, what's the thing that we can rely on? It's our critical mind, our ability to question, to probe, to look through evidence and find misinformation and uncover nuggets of truth. Your brain is a gift. Use it wisely. So let's arm ourselves with skepticism, but let it be a tool, not a weapon, a means to uncover the truth, not just to doubt it. All right, friends, we've hopefully torched the JFK conspiracy myths like a historian with a flamethrower. So let's take 5 and talk about, I don't know, Area 51? Not the aliens, I know, a bummer. But did you know that stealth aircraft were developed at Area 51? It's like the VIP lounge of military tech that thrived on Cold War paranoia, and its secrecy and the credibility gap inspired all of those UFO claims, which meant that they were doing all sorts of wild science there. If your curiosity's piqued and you're itching to dig deeper into the labyrinth of governmental secrets and classified projects, I've got the thing for you. There's a documentary called Tip of the Spear, The B-2 Spirit.
It peels back the layers on the development of the stealth bomber, the very tech that Area 51 helped birth into existence. And guess what? You won't find this gem on YouTube or any other mainstream platform. Nope. It's a Nebula original, exclusive to our platform.
So you might be wondering, what's this Nebula thing and why should I care? Well, let me info dump some in your direction. Nebula is like the speakeasy of the internet, a place where creators can go full mad scientist without the constraints of mainstream platforms. You know how we just debunked a bunch of JFK myths? Imagine a space where you can dive into even more topics that are too hot for YouTube to handle. Nebula's mission is to empower creators to tell nuanced stories, the kind that don't necessarily get the love of the almighty algorithm. It's a haven for those who crave depth over breadth, who want to explore topics without the constant interruption of ads or the fear of demonetization. It's like the anti-Twitter of video platforms. More nuance, less noise. It's like upgrading from economy to first class, but for your brain.
All right, so you're sold on Nebula, but maybe you're thinking, my wallet's already crying from all the other subscriptions I have.
Don't sweat it. I have a deal that's sweeter than Elon's tears. How does a 40% discount sound? Yeah, you heard me right, 4T. It's like finding a $20 bill in the pocket of your winter coat, but digitally. Getting this discount is easier than explaining to your grandma why she shouldn't eat horse dewormer. Just go to nebula.tv/stepback or click the link in the description or the pinned comment, or if you're watching this on a TV, just scan this QR code with your phone. There's no strings attached, no capitalist traps, just a straightforward, honest-to-goodness discount. And why should you take advantage of this? Well, because Nebula is like the Swiss Army knife of content platforms. It's got something for everyone. You want to dive into the nitty-gritty of history? Check. You want to understand the complexities of modern politics without the sugarcoating? Double check. You want airline-based game show? Check, check, check. It's a platform that doesn't just scratch the surface, it digs deep like a miner in search of gold. So there you have it. Nebula is not just another streaming platform, it's a revolution in how we consume and create content. And with that 40% discount, it's practically a steal. Seriously, it's like getting a front row seat to the revolution for the price of a fast food meal. And you know what? That's a trade-up. All right, let's get back into the meat and potatoes, shall we? Consider this an invitation. An invitation to a space where the depths of history are plumbed, where the myths are unmasked, and where critical thought is the compass. You do that by hitting subscribe and sign up for Nebula.